Today we are going to continue working on this rear wing. As is super sturdy. I have no doubts about this at all. Again, of course, now we're gonna start getting those it's gonna break off comments, but that's absolutely ridiculous. I'm not gonna be standing on this one this time. I have nothing to prove. You guys should know by now that this thing is not going anywhere. I have more than enough confidence that this car could be pushed at the very top. I am pushing very hard right now, and it is not going anywhere, and we still have a ton of glass work yet to go, and that is what today is pretty much going to be. We are going to continue off fiberglassing this entire piece. If you remember from the last video, we only got a little bit of fiberglass here just to kind of keep it exactly where we want it. We can go ahead and take out these little anchors that we used to help pull it out to where we wanted it to be. Because the center here is raised a little bit, it would have had a little bit of a bend. But now that we got that out and it's glassed in place, we can continue to glass this completely in, and then from there we can start working on glassing this top and glassing these sides into where we want. We are going to have it come down. This profile here is going to come down and then curve into the fender here, just like a lot of the Bozo cars have. If you look online, you can see a ton of them have this kind of curve that slightly blends into the fender here. So that's what we're going to try and work on later on, but right now we're going to try and get this thing completely glassed in. It seems like a ton of you guys are really happy with the height of this thing, and as I continue to look at it, I am extremely happy with it. We're going to continue with this, and I'm super excited to see how it's going to look when it's finished. So it's been a while since I last updated you, and as you can see, this car is now back on the stock wheels, and that's because we sold the Archer plates that we had on this thing. They were a little too bubbly, and I think that's because we didn't have enough of a stretch. So I think we're gonna go with a thinner tire, but with the same sidewall. It's actually a little bit bigger, but because it's gonna be a smaller section width or whatever, it's gonna be the exact same diameter, but it's gonna be a little bit smaller, have a little bit more stretch, and hopefully get rid of some of that bubbliness. Either that or we're gonna go with a different tire. I'm not exactly sure. Obviously, I would prefer to go with Advance, be super authentic, but the only ones I can find in 14s, I have to import from Japan, and they're like $1,200 plus like $500 shipping, and even at that, I don't think they would fit my wheels, and even if they did, they'd have an incredibly large amount of stretch because they're 185s on a 10.5-inch wheel. So I don't think we're gonna be able to go with those, but I'm gonna see if I can find something maybe on Yahoo Auctions, but even at that, I don't really have the time for that because pretty soon we're gonna have to get this ride height adjusted perfectly, adjust the side skirts and everything else perfectly, and then go from there and do paint prep, and we really don't have a whole lot of time for that. Moving on, we're continuing to work on this rear wing. Since you've last seen, I have this top side all sanded down so we can put some fiberglass on that while we do this backside. So I've been doing a lot of figuring out with our marks here and seeing how we're going to blend this into the quarter panel. And we're gonna use this piece here to go onto the back here, and that's going to bridge this gap here. It's gonna fill this in rather than filling that in with filler. We're gonna try and use as much glass as possible. We're gonna put that in here. This back part is actually gonna be a little bit like the original one. It's gonna look entirely smooth. I didn't really want that at first. I was gonna have it just come from where the factory body panel goes up. There's kind of a little bit of an edge right here, and I was just gonna smooth smooth that out. However, we're gonna smooth this whole thing out because otherwise it won't look right once we get to this edge here. So we're gonna have to glass this piece in all the way across the back here. We're gonna basically make this a little bit more smooth. We're gonna bring it out to here, and then from here we can make this cap, and from there just a bunch of glass work, and we'll be kind of good with the wing there. We could probably cut this apart, but that's a lot of work. So basically next thing to do is to glass this thing in. From there, we'll glass this top side. We'll have to wait for that to dry, and then we can move on. Believe it or not, we completely went through this entire roll. It was, you know, a little used, but we completely used this one, and so I had to go pick up another one. This is what that looked like originally. Obviously, it was a little bit used when I was using that one, but we went through that again. So this, obviously being brand new, it's really big and it's kind of in the way, and also whenever we roll this thing out to cut it, we usually roll it on the ground, and sometimes we get some stuff on it because the ground's not always clean. So we decided to pick up a rod and some things just to kind of keep it up there. We're gonna kind of have it like a paper towel roll of fiberglass. So now, instead of wasting space on the ground, since this shop really isn't that big, and also getting the fiberglass dirty, now we have this big ass heavy roll up out of the way. Now that this is all dried up, the next thing to do is to trim all this excess off, build our end plates, and then we're gonna glass all this in. We now have the trunk spoiler pretty much finished up with the main shape, at least. Obviously, we have a ton of work still to do. We still have to fill all this in. We're going to fiberglass all this, and from there we have a ton of filler work to do. We have to cap off the insides of here once we get that all gapped up a little bit more. I made sure to get the gaps pretty good, so that way when the trunk opens and closes, the gap is consistent, so that way we're not ever hitting it, especially once it's painted. That's going to be an issue. So this time I was a lot more careful while cutting it, so we didn't have to do quite as much body work with this whole thing once we get it capped up and everything. So far this thing is really sturdy. These side pieces, you could see that they're glassed in all the way from the tip here all the way up here. That's a lot of glass holding that bottom piece in, and then all this is still going to be glass. So there's a lot more glass work to do, but we're gonna do it while we're waiting for stuff to dry and in between when we are starting to work on our silhouette spoiler, which is what is next. Anyways guys, that is where I am wrapping it up for today. If you guys are interested in helping out the channel and the progression of this build, go ahead and pick up yourself some merch. I have the link in the description. Anyways guys, that is gonna be it for today. Hope you enjoyed, and peace out.